Well, good morning to you once again, and thank you so much for still being with us here as we journey on the 15th of August 2023. And I know that we do have some 100 plus people streaming live on our YouTube channel, NTV Uganda, equally on Facebook. And so thank you so much for being a part of the digital transformation, which is the embedment of our Kickstarter conversation this morning, unveiling the digital transformation roadmap, which is directly under the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, and also preparing for success in a modern business landscape that is tech forward. Backbone of it is, like many other countries throughout the world, Uganda has placed digitalization at the heart of its national development journey, and not only as a key enabler to improve service delivery, but also as an avenue to create employment for the country's youthful population. Uganda's digital transformation roadmap is anchored in the Uganda Vision 2040, conceptualized by strengthening the fundamentals of the economy of the country, including opportunities within the information and communication technology sector, which is ICT sector. The digital transformation roadmap also is going to be building on commitments set under the Digital Uganda Vision by focusing on the imperatives to achieve operational momentum as well as great strides that translate from paper to action. And to dive deeper into this discussion, I am joined by a sector player in the ICT, and that is Mr. Amos Mpungu, who's the Principal ICT Officer at the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. Good morning to you, Mr. Mpungu.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Very, very good.
Yes.
Well, so when you talk about a map, back in school, I used to imagine, you know, the atlas kind of map where it includes the entire globe. Look at the entire globe. Now, when you add road to map, it means that direction on how you get to navigate the entire globe. However, this morning we are looking into the digital transformation roadmap. Can you please explain to us what that is?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. Good morning, viewers. The roadmap, we are basically, as I said, trying to set ourselves a journey of how we can transform this economy, of how we can achieve the aspirations of Vision 2040 in particular, and which contribution or how ICT can contribute to that journey, or how ICT can contribute to the aspirations or to us achieving the aspirations of Vision 2040. So with that, we developed what we call the Digital Uganda Vision, looking at the targets set for us as a sector under Vision 2040, and we just customize that to what ICT can contribute, what ICT should be like in 2040. Then the roadmap is one of those tools that we are going to use to get to achieve the Digital Uganda Vision. Yeah. So
what is entailed in this roadmap? Where does it start from? When will the middle be? And what will be the achieved objective in 2040?
Okay. The aspirations and the Digital Uganda Vision, one is a transformed service delivery. As government, that is our core mandate, to provide services to our citizens. Then we have a data-driven economy, a digital data-driven economy, which is basically looking at how do we make decisions, or how do we make investments within government that are driven by evidence. We have another aspiration that is looking at improving Uganda's ranking in the indices. There are a number of indices, ICT-related indices in the world, and we want to improve Uganda's ranking. What that means is that we actually get to place ICT as one of the services that other countries can actually import from Uganda. So we want to place Uganda at that level. And to do that, within the Digital Uganda Vision and as attendant to the Digital Transformation Roadmap, we have 5 pillars. The first pillar is digital infrastructure and connectivity. We need to be able to, we need infrastructure against which we actually deliver services. I can tell that even in this studio you have infrastructure, you have cameras, you have for your viewers to be able to access you. So that's where we start. Then On top of that, we now start developing digital services. That we have the infrastructure. For example, not so long ago, we're saying we've cut the cost of internet through NITA. Now, on top of that, now having cut the cost of internet, which service can we provide to the users or to the citizens with that they can access through government? So we shall be building digital services so that we bring services closer to the people. Then we shall look at skilling. It does not make any sense for us to build fancy equipment, come up with fancy equipment, come up with fancy services or systems that the users cannot use. So we want to skill the population, give them digital skills so that they can actually consume these services. However, when you look at when you use services, actually, generally, in all things we do, in most cases, we generate a lot of data. Mm-hmm. The beauty about data generated electronically is that it can be kept somewhere, it can easily be referenced. So we shall be looking at a data-driven economy, building use cases on top of that. And that is where innovation comes in. In so many cases, the data that is generated by government, in most cases, we are looking at being able to report on the different objectives as we set ourselves, being able to report on the international and regional objectives, the SDGs and all that. But if you get this data and put it in private sector, give it to private sector, they can build so much on top of it. So we're looking at supporting and sustaining the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. Out of whichever products that will come out of these services, what can they build? They can build commercial services on top of that, and we shall make a better economy there. And finally, because we want to use digital services, we also need to be able to secure those. Okay, digital services are a bit tricky. If you left this studio and locked it, put an askari out there, you almost 100% that your equipment in the studio is secure. That is not usually the case with cyber services. Mm-hmm. Someone in Nairobi, someone 1,000 miles away can sit somewhere and perpetrate a crime here. So within, we also need to look at that realm, not just how do we secure services as Ugandans, but we also need to think globally, because when we talk about digital, it's not local only. Mm-hmm. We need to look at how can Kenya support us, how can Tanzania support us, how can the UK support us, or how do we make those relations so that if a crime is perpetrated in Uganda but being perpetrated by someone seated in the UK, then how do we get that person to justice? How do we find redress for the person that has been, the crime has been committed against? That is the roadmap in a nutshell. 5 critical pillars: infrastructure, security, digital services, innovation, and skilling. Okay. In a nutshell. And we are not doing one by one, but it's an ecosystem. Concurrently. Yes, concurrently. Okay. Yeah. All right.
This begs the question, which systems and which roadmaps did you benchmark on that have actually worked, that you decided, okay, because it has worked here as it was, you've adopted it as a ministry to be able to implement it for us here in Uganda?
We've not adopted so far, per se. It's not doing a copy and paste, but we've learned along the way as we are developing the roadmap. It's been a long journey of about 12 months, and the country we've looked at most is Estonia. Right now, Estonia provides all services apart from one. So I don't know whether I can call it 99.9% or 99%, but all its services you can access services in Estonia online. Mm-hmm. The only thing that you cannot do online in Estonia is divorce. Mm. But you can actually now even get married online. You can sign contracts, you can buy land, anything that you can think of can be accessed online in Estonia. And that is where we want to go. Okay. So we looked at their journey, we looked at the experiences, and now we want to integrate that. Of course, we want to customize that to the Ugandan context. We want to customize that. There are a lot of differences between Estonia and ourselves. First of all, the size. They are very small. The population, they are 2.3 million. We are 45 million. So but we realize that there is a lot we can pick from them that we can actually customize and be able to utilize and implement and get to where they are.
Okay.
Yes.
This digital transformation roadmap does not stand aloof of the whole economy, right? And all the other sectors. As ICT, you pretty much are complementary and supplementary to what is happening. Now, in regards to this roadmap, where do the other sectors come in? Where do the other ministries come in? Where do the other public service entities come into play, and at what point do they come into play? Because what happens is that Ministry of ICT will come up with its roadmap and it will start implementing it. However, Ministry of Education will not be on board, or will not have the funding to come on board. You do have the Ministry of Health that has different challenges, and at that point, a priority is not to make sure that they do centralize their systems and their service delivery to take forward. So things like that, I feel like you might find conflict in this roadmap.
Not necessarily. First of all, I want to correct you. ICT is not complementary and supplementary. It is an enabler. It is at the core of everything, if you look at it. And that is one of the things that we are starting to appreciate as government across board. I'll give you a simple example. I don't know when you last tried to renew a driving permit. If you took it 5 years ago, you'd go to Chambogo and spend about half a day. Right now, it takes you about 30 minutes. That is ICT at the core of improving service, of efficiency. Okay, because right now, the moment you've cleared the user URL, all you need is to just appear there. You have your national ID, and within 30 minutes, you've left the place. Okay. The only thing that might delay you is how many people are ahead of you in the queue. But in actual sense, it is a quick, swift service that is given to you, contrary to what it was a few years ago. And that is because they have tried to automate this. Health, for example, it is appreciated. Actually, health is one of those sectors that has tried to invest a lot in ICT. The only difference is, and that's where the roadmap needs to help, one of the things that it wants to achieve is coherence and understanding complementarity in some of these. You can find that the USAID is supporting health to develop an application probably on malaria, and that is you can find that application working in Masaka. Then you find another development partner supporting a similar initiative, but it's working in Busoga. Okay. Now, with a roadmap, what we want to do is put all these people on the same table. Say, okay, guys, you're interested in supporting health in malaria. Now, why don't you all put your efforts towards achieving this? Okay, so that now each of them get to understand each other. Because what we came to learn within the landscape is that sometimes even them don't know what they are doing. Okay, someone doesn't know, one development partner doesn't know that another development partner is investing in the same.
Precisely my argument.
So, and that is what the roadmap is trying to come up with. If you look at it, we are trying to bring that coherence and try to set up within the framework. Then secondly, it is also, I think it has also come as a blessing in disguise that the time we thought about a roadmap, government is already thinking about the program approach. What happens in the program approach is that we usually sit together as sectors. Now we stop thinking as sectors and start thinking as programs. A digital transformation program, for example, which the Ministry of ICT leads. And then we start thinking of, okay, as health, what do you need? And that's why within the roadmap or within the implementation we are talking about, we need to connect these so many health centers to internet. Because we want you to be able to leave Mulago, go to Kabale, region Itojo, so for example, and find your records in Itojo. Okay. That is what ICT can help you do. That is what actually, no, that's what ICT will help you do.
Which begs the interrogation of the roadmap that you started with, enabling environment and infrastructure. As we stand currently, or as far as at least public service delivery is concerned, that is still a little bit limited. And of course, we're in a financial year where you do have budget cuts that were already present. In light of what's happening with the World Bank discussions, there's also going to be more expected cuts. So isn't that going to be affecting your appeal of enabling environment and infrastructure? And equally in relation to that, as you give us a response to that, what is going to be the actualization of an enabling environment? What exactly will be required to have that enabling environment? What infrastructures do you have to put in place for this to become a reality towards 2040?
The beauty about ICT is that it's not a one person's game. Government is making its efforts, yes, to invest a lot in infrastructure. But then we also have private sector. We have the MNOs, the mobile network operators. They are actually rolling out a lot of infrastructure. It does not necessarily mean that the service I provide as government has to run on government infrastructure. Okay. No, we can run on any kind of infrastructure. Actually, as I said, if you're paying for government service now, you're using a mobile network, okay? Use mobile money to pay for government service. God forbid, let me just take an example. You get a penalty, a traffic penalty today. You have that service off the mobile money. Okay, you can pay it off. You're not using government infrastructure, but you're actually paying government taxes. So, yes, government might have a limitation, but again, if you look at how we, if I took you through the journey of how we developed this, we've actually had everyone on the table. Private sector, development partners, everyone, and we've all looked at how do we all achieve the Uganda we want to achieve. On
the side of private sector and development partners, what have they presented as the queries or challenges that they face as far as enabling environment is concerned as players?
I think development partners, that one we've already addressed. As I mentioned, in most cases they have not known who is doing what. So we're putting that on the table, streamlining that. Our private sector, it's mainly around our policies, our regulations, and we definitely saying, okay, again, regulations, policies, and laws, these are living documents. We can always look at revising them. For example, we're thinking, okay, something that came up, they said, the current policy or the current regulations for access of spectrum, it is mainly around auction, highest bidder. But someone is thinking, okay, can't we tweak this and find that if Amos has an innovation, a good innovation, that needs to run on a small spectrum band, can we actually think of prioritizing that innovation, looking at how it will be affect the economic effect or the social effect it can have on the country? Can we look at tweaking our regulations a bit and addressing such issues?
Okay. Yeah. All right. You have mentioned laws and regulatory, places. Which ones in particular do you intend to actually adjust and revise to enable the roadmap into activation?
I think that is going to depend much on once we get into implementation. Then you start looking at where the roadblocks. We have a complete M&E framework on top of the roadmap that helps us. We've tried to structure it, it's 5 years, but we've tried to structure it into what can we achieve in first year, in 3 years' time, and in 5 years. Now, along that line, we shall be doing a lot of M&E, trying to understand what we wanted to achieve this, have we achieved it? If we haven't, what is the stumbling block? And we get to learn and adjust accordingly. So we not specific, but we at least open that, okay, if we find a challenge and it is within the law, if it is within the gender regulation, within the policy, then we can be able to adjust that.
All right. Of course, this digital transformation roadmap is not yet officially launched, but I know that the launch is around the corner. Could you speak to us on the short-term, medium-term, and long-term deliverables for the roadmap?
Okay. Short-term, the first few things we want to develop. For example, soon we shall have a big data utilization strategy. This is looking, as I mentioned, whenever using digital services, you generate a lot of data, and the beauty about electronic data is that you can always refer to it, reference it, and use it as many times as possible. So that is one of the quickest things that we thought that will help us build, first of all, a data use culture within government and across the entire country, where we stop using things of how big is the population of Uganda? But we want to be precise. Where we make decisions or policy decisions that are within the context, okay? Not just because it is ICT, so I only look at the data of ICT and make a decision. But let me look at the context, okay? The entire context of, okay, there's ICT, there's health, there's gender. How does all this data fit in together to actually come up with a policy decision? Again, we also working with means of education, to develop what we call a pilot digital skilling acceleration program. As you mentioned, one of the pillars is digital skilling. So we want to be able to work with means of education because that is their job. And that is where the roadmap, as you said, those are the coherences we want to find. Skilling is means of education, not necessarily. Yes, we can provide content and provide expertise, but it's not our job really to do the skill. They know it better. So we're also going to work with means of education. We've developed a short one, a three-year program. Basically, what we want to test that and then see how can we implement it long term. And quick ones, of course, in quick wins, we've also tried to start off on a few things. We already have an innovation hub, a national innovation hub in Nakawa, that is actually hosting a number of over 70 innovators, looking at each of them in their different spaces. You have fintechs, you have edutechs, agritechs. They're all trying to think through or innovate around ICT and what they can help. And we now we're saying, okay, this is just in Nakawa. We need to spread this further. So we're getting into we're getting into partnerships with universities. So far, we've had a partnership with Kabale University, setting up innovation hub there. Muni University in West Nile, setting up innovation. Soroti in Teso, setting up innovation hub. So where we now, at the end of the day, whatever they do here, we put it together at the National Innovation Hub, and we continue spreading it there. Again, in skilling, I don't know if you've heard of the DigiTrack, which is actually moving around in informal settings and providing actually skilling. So some of these things actually we already starting to pilot through, where we learn lessons, as I mentioned. We're going to be continually doing an M&E, monitoring and evaluation. We learn lessons and improve, learn lessons and improve. We can address some issues within the cohort of this roadmap, but also it will also inform the next one that we shall be developing. Yeah.
Okay, I know that you do have a development partner on board, that's UNDP. We want to find out what is their contribution towards the process and implementation of this digital transformation roadmap exercise.
Yeah, we have to be actually quite grateful. We are quite grateful to UNDP. They have supported this entire journey. As I mentioned, the roadmap has been a 12-month journey, and they have been with us from the beginning to the end. They have all the research, the benchmarking we've done, that has been facilitated by UNDP, writing the documentation. They have actually hired for us a consultant that we've worked with to help us put all these two things together. Yes, Amos might have the PS, and Amos might have very good ideas that we want, but you also need someone on the desk that puts them together, and they hired for us a private firm, Centennial Technology Services, that we worked with. But actually not even UNDP, we've also had other partners. Team Europe has been with us within the journey. They helped us put stakeholders together in one room, and we all ideated on how exactly we can put all this together. Some of them came up with, some of them picked out areas of interest and said, okay, once you launch, I think this is where we want to start. The ambassador of Sweden, she invited us to her home actually, where we also gathered a number of people and discussed and had, but at the back of it all was the technical and financial support from UNDP, and we are very, very quite grateful.
Okay. Let's talk about the middle players and the end users. I think one of the queries that came out, and I was hoping that the PS to the ministry would address it, Madam Zawete, but we did get really a particular address to it. It comes down to the cost of ICT equipment, because as an enabler, that means you have, and the infrastructure that you talked about, that calls for quite a hefty investment in that regard. Even like to the end users, devices are still quite costly, especially if you're doing the DigiLab thing to the remote areas, yet the cost of devices to enable this infrastructure grow and the roadmap work is still high. How do you intend to actually manage that?
Okay. Again, I think the roadmap has the answer. We know we can't do this on our own. So as part of delivering such, you have to work within the ecosystem. We have, we've already started engaging means of finance. Okay, we know government needs to increase revenue, right? But then we're also thinking, okay, maybe we can think of how we change the taxi policy. But of course, for us to be able to make that argument, then we need to show how can government make revenue long term. I think it's already been stated. I think she stated it in one of her addresses that, for example, already data shows under ITU that just a penetration of 10% in broadband gives you a 1.4% increase in GDP. Now, if I can put, and as again I said, we want to be a data-driven economy. If I put all my data straight and all my statistics, and I can show to Ministry of Finance that, okay, if you give me a little bit of a tax holiday for 1 or 2 or 3 years for these devices to go down, then I can bring you this much revenue. I think those are some of the things that we want to do. So we've come to understand that ICT, and I think that's also what government is trying to achieve under the program approach, that okay, each sector cannot work on its own. We need that coherence. We need to plug into each other to be able to deliver the aspirations as we want them to be. So we definitely already thinking about how do we actually get these devices to come to a lower cost. Some of it might just be you let the market play out, and probably because you've introduced a service that actually requires people to access the gadgets, because the volumes have increased, then even the people that you're getting them from.
Okay. All right, Mr. Mpungu, in your closing remarks about the digital transformation roadmap, about the launch, and what's the expected hope for Ugandans out of this? Okay.
First of all, I want to encourage you Ugandans to tune in to most of the broadcasters on Thursday. We shall be having our High Excellency, Jessica Lupo, the VP, launching the roadmap. We shall be getting into detail of what exactly we have. So I want to invite all Ugandans to tune in. And we as a ministry, we have a YouTube channel that you can look at, but we shall also be in mainstream media, basically detailing what exactly we have in stock for you. And I want to believe that it is a conversation, or it will be half a day that is well spent on your screen, because there is a lot that we want to unveil, and I'm sure as a Ugandan who is interested in transformation, you'll be able to pick 1 or 2 things that you can contribute to, or that you can achieve.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Amos Mpungu. He's a Principal ICT Officer at the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, and look forward to the Thursday's launch, the 17th of August, when the roadmap will be launched and how exactly it will transform you, your business, as well as the nation's economy. That brings us to the end of our Kickstarter. We take a short breather. We return with more conversations. Don't move a muscle.